Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our special masterclass where we're going to talk about supply chain analytics. Now, supply chain analytics is a very important aspect of the industry. So, what are the various different things that we will cover as part of supply chain analytics? Right. Now, first, we need to understand what is supply chain analytics before we proceed and do anything else. Let's talk about supply chain analytics. Okay. So here we are going to utilize our data and analytics tools. Okay. And we are going to look at the optimization of the flow of goods as well as services throughout the supply chain. Okay. So we're going to take a look at how anything is converted from raw material to how it goes to end consumers. Okay. That is what we are focusing on as part of our supply chain analytics, right? Now let's take a very simple example here. You have a query. That query is actually a copper mine. Now, what does the copper mine do? It will extract the copper mineral from the earth. Now, copper is used heavily in wires. So any kind of electric wires, they will rely on copper because of the properties of copper, which make it easy and friendly for the conducting of electricity. Okay. So how does copper go from a extracted resource from within the earth to something that is a part of our wires is the process that we want to learn about. Okay. So supply chain analytics will help us focus on enhanced decision-making processes and leveraging data to improve our efficiency, reduce cost, and increase customer satisfaction. Now, supply chain analytics is going to deal with all the steps which are involved from when something is a raw material to when it is taken as an end product. So all the steps will be involved in our supply chain analytics. And that is what we want to learn about. Okay, today. We're going to focus on the various different aspects of the industry which enable us to create these supply chains and how we can manage and optimize the various different aspects of the process. Okay. Now, what are the various different use cases or key aspects of our supply chain analytics? The first one is demand forecasting. Okay. Now, what do we do in demand forecasting? We are going to try and predict the future consumer demand based on historical sales data. And we are going to take a look at things such as market trends and any other relevant factor depending on the industry that you're focusing on. The accuracy of our demand forecasting is very critical because it will allow us to plan inventory levels, production schedules, and procurement strategies. Then, so here we are going to try to predict future demand. Now, the next use case that we have is known as inventory management. Now, supply chain is not a straightforward process. Supply chain doesn't mean that you will take the raw material and you will just somehow convert it into an end product at the source itself, and that will be taken up directly by the user. There is a lot of journey which is involved in our processes. There are a lot of stops along the way where this raw material will be converted into some products. That product will be then transported to the relevant location. It will then be stored in the relevant location, because you are not just going to create something which is required on the spot, but rather you're going to focus on trying to understand how much demand there will be, and you will obviously keep some stock of the product. Now, coming back to our example of electric wires, we don't produce electric wires based on the need at any given moment. Okay, so I don't just, create I don't just create a wire as and when I need it. I will have it ready. I will go purchase it. I will utilize it. That is where inventory management will come into the picture, because I want to have an optimized number of wires in my stock. I don't want to have too many wires. Okay. I don't want to have too little wires. Right. So we need to find the optimized stock level. We need to reduce our holding costs, because keep this thing in mind that when you are placing some product in stock and it is sitting there, it is going to cost you. Now, where is this cost coming for? You might say that, okay, well, it's just occupying space, but that occupation of space in itself is the cost, right? So in this regard, we have to understand an important aspect. Whenever we have any product which is just sitting there and it's not being utilized, it's going to cost you. Okay, it will cost you some money. So we need to optimize to reduce our cost. Okay, optimization to reduce the cost is a very important aspect. Okay, so we will focus on our optimization of inventory management. We will also try to look at these different steps which are involved from raw material to end product, which is consumed by the customer. And we will just try to focus on optimization of supply chain itself. So in optimization of supply chain, we will use mathematical models and algorithms to optimize the various different aspects of supply chain. We're going to look at production planning, transportation, warehousing, and distribution. The goal is to minimize the cost while meeting service level requirements. We will look at supplier performance analysis. So, what do we do in supplier performance analysis? We will evaluate the supplier performance based on different criteria, such as delivery time, quality, cost, and reliability. Now, in most cases, you will have more than one supplier. Okay, so in this regard, you want to ensure that whatever supplies you're getting, they are of the best possible quality. But at the same time, they should be reliable in nature. They should be delivered on time, and the costs have to be optimized. You don't want to just pay extra for high quality products every time, because that will increase your overall cost, which will increase the burden on the end user. Okay. Then we have various other things, but one more important aspect that we need to look at is risk management. Now, the question arises, how does risk management play any kind of role in our supply chain optimization? Why do we need to do risk management? Well, supply chain is a process which involves multiple steps. Any simple breakage of a single step will cost us money and it will cost you some problems. Okay. Now, let's take a look at our basic workflow of how a supply chain will work. We will have some raw material here. This raw material will be sent to a supplier. And again, this is logistics. What are the logistics involved in moving the raw material to the supplier? Again, from the supplier, it will go to our manufacturer, who's responsible for creating the product itself. But the consumer is not going to the manufacturer directly. How many times have you gone directly to the source to buy a product? You don't go to a farm every time you need to buy milk, right? You go to a grocery store, you go there, you pick out a milk or whatever other item that you're looking to purchase. So how does it go from the manufacturer? From the manufacturer, we will have somebody known as a distributor. Now, keep in mind that all supply chains don't work like this. This is just an example to help you understand why risk management is important. Now, once we go from the distributor is going to load up things in their trucks and they're going to go away. So this brings us again to the question. Do you buy the product directly from the truck? Not every time. Maybe once or twice you might have done it. Everybody has done that in their life. But overall, most of the time, we are going to buy the product from some kind of retailer. Now, this can be a small time retailer like a mom and pop shop, right? It can also be some kind of chain store, right? The retailer will keep a stock of the product, and that product will be taken up by the consumer. Okay. And finally, the consumer, depending on the demand, more raw material will be extracted. So this is a cycle that is followed. Okay. And this is a sample cycle that is followed. Now, where does risk management come into the picture? Well, risk management is a part of our entire process. This entire life cycle that you're looking at is going to be involved in risk management because there are risks involved in every single step. Okay. Let's say that your raw material is dependent on maybe some kind of weather. Okay, let's talk about a basic example of milk. Okay. Milk is sourced from the farms. Okay. Now, what if there is some kind of disease that is affecting cattle? So, if there is disease, then your raw material itself is impacted, right? The raw material in itself is having some issues. So, your entire process is disrupted. So, you need to optimize the entire step, starting from raw material. Maybe you go to the supplier, okay, no issues in supplier. But in the manufacturer part, there is some issue with the farms or with the manufacturing plants. There is some issues there. Again, you have a disruption in the entire process, right? or there is some issue with the retailer or the distributor, or even that the consumer is not, happy with the product, again, some kind of risk is involved. Okay. There are some economic factors which mean that now the consumer is unable to purchase the product. So as a result, the demand is reduced. Okay. So we have our raw material getting impacted. Okay. So this is how our supply chain analytics is going to work. Okay. Now, let's talk about the our data that we are going to be looking at. Okay. So in the data, we have a sample data where we have 1,000 rows and we have 33. And we are looking at a wide variety of columns. We are going to have integer and float values. And we are also going to have something known as object. Now, what is this object? Object is categorical data. Okay. So let's take a look at the data and let's understand the data first before we do anything else. Now, this is the data that we are dealing with. Okay. So let's see if we can open this data in a different format, which makes it easy for us to understand column by column what is going on here. So in our data, we want to analyze what is going on. Okay. So now, the first is our supplier ID. Okay. Supplier ID is just assigning some kind of ID to a supplier. Okay. And then we have the address of the supplier. Okay. Which is going to give us what kind of address they are, where they are located. And then we have the name of the supplier as well as their contact details. So this is all related to the information about the different suppliers that are available. Then after that, we have the product ID. Okay. So in the product ID, you're going to have information about what product are you using. So for example, if we have Toyota, what is the product that is being used in the Toyota? What is the product which is used in Mercedes-Benz? So we have M class, CL class, right, etc. What is the color of the car? And then we also have the car model year. In which year was this car created? Okay. And then we will have the price of the car. Okay. How much did this car cost? Okay. And what was the consumer details? So we have some consumer details as well. So what do we see in this data so far? We see that we have the data for our supplier, or we can say we have the data for the retailer, which is available to us. And we also have the data available for our consumers, as well as the product that they are consuming. So we have a good set of information which is available to us. Okay. Now, after all of this, we have their name, gender, and job title. So we have phone number, email, as well as their location, etc. So we can see that we have a lot of information available for both the supplier as well as the consumer. So we don't have any dearth of information quality which is available to us. Okay, we have everything that we need available as part of our supply chain analytics. Okay, whatever you want to understand, whatever kind of data you want to take a look at, we have that information available to us. Okay. After that, we have other important things such as the order related information. What was the date on which the order was placed? What was the order ID? Every order will have its own unique ID. What was the date of the shipping? What was the mode of the shipping? What was the primary transport for the shipping? And then what was the postal code at which the ship was sent? Then we have other information such as what is the sale value? Okay. So here you can see that these are the different sale values for different products. What was the overall quantity which was purchased? Okay. Was any discount given to the user? Now the discount will depend on things such as what kind of credit card were they using. Okay. We also have information such as the credit card number. And another thing that we need to look at is the customer feedback. Okay, so what kind of experience did the consumer had with that specific supplier? Now, this is the data which is available to us. So let's try and break down some of these columns. Okay. So let's try and understand what all of these columns are designed to do and what is the purpose of each and every column that we are going to be looking at. Okay, so we have 33 different columns that we will be using. Okay, so what do these 33 different columns have in ideas? So first we will understand a few columns which are not required. We are looking at something like supplier address. We don't need the exact location from the supplier to optimize our process, or something like supplier contact details. Now, this is something which is very useful when you're dealing with something like CSR, that is customer service relationships. Okay. But when it comes to our supply chain analytics optimization, this is not a necessary detail. We have other things such as the customer address. So again, the exact address is not as important for us. It's not something which will add any unique value to our data. And then we have their phone number as well as email address. Again, these things are very useful when we are doing customer analytics. But we are not doing customer analytics here. Neither are we doing supplier analytics. We are instead looking at supply chain analytics. Okay. So what we need to do here is we need to analyze how we can improve the experience for our end user. Okay. So column by column, we will try to understand what are the different aspects which are available to us. Now, obviously, we have done some preliminary analysis here. So we're going to focus on that. Right. Let's go and look at the Python code and keep these 5 columns in mind, because we are not going to need these 5 columns going forward. Okay. Instead, we are just going to try to get rid of these columns or ignore these columns altogether. Okay. So let's try to understand what we are going to do here. First of all, what I want to do here is I want to take a look at my libraries that I'm using. So what are these different libraries? We have pandas. Pandas is used for data manipulation. Okay. Then we have sklearn. Scikit-learn is a very important package in our machine learning and data science field. Even in analytics, scikit-learn plays a very important role for us. Okay. So what does scikit-learn do for us? Okay. It gives us an efficient set of tools. So we have our efficient set of tools. But for what? What are these tools going to do for us? Well, we can use them for data mining. We can use them for data analysis. And we can also use them for machine learning. So our end-to-end analytics journey can be covered as part of our scikit-learn. That is how useful scikit-learn is. Okay. That is how much information scikit-learn can give us. Okay. So now we will also have visualization libraries such as Seaborn and Matplotlib. Now we need to talk about data sources. Okay. So where is the data going to come from when it comes to supply chain analytics? There are a wide variety of data sources which can be used. Okay. So obviously you will have your traditional things such as a database. Okay. So you can have a SQL database. Now, what will the SQL database do for us? SQL database will give us structured data. So whenever I'm using any kind of structured approach or I'm looking at any kind of structured data, for example, we have a CSV file or we have our Excel files, okay? Or even if you have any other kind of tabular data, you can use your SQL database, okay? We will also have NoSQL for when we are dealing with something like maybe documents. For example, we are going to have bills of different kinds, right? So where are these bills going to be stored? These bills can be stored as part of our NoSQL databases. Okay. So aside from that, we have different tools or different sources from which we can extract the data. So we will have something known as ERP. ERP is enterprise resource planning. So this is a very commonly used system in the industry. So in ERP, we will have things such as inventory level. We will have production schedules. We will have order status, and we will have procurement data. And ERP is going to integrate the various different business processes which are involved in the supply chain industry. And it is going to create a central repository of real-time data across the entire supply chain system. Then we will also have something known as WMS, which is our warehouse management system. Now, obviously, warehouses play a major role in supply chains. Okay, so warehouse management system is very critical, is part of our data source. In this, we will be having different stock levels. So for every product at any given moment, how much stock is available, which is a very important aspect, which is a very important question that you need to answer, right? So we will have stock levels, we will have picking and packing records, and we will have inbound and outbound shipments. So all the steps which are involved in the flow of goods in and out, and as well as the storage of goods in a warehouse will be covered as part of WMS. Okay. Then we will have something similar. So now, how does raw material flow from the source to the consumer? We have covered the various different steps, right? So similar to our warehouse management system, we will have something known as TMS. TMS is similar to warehouse, but for transport. Okay. Obviously, transport plays a major role. Movement of goods from one location to another is very important. So that is where TMS comes into the picture. You're going to look at the different shipping routes which are available, because a lot of times goods are shipped. Now, we have various different sources with which your product can move. So you have traditional sources such as roadways and railways. Okay, you load up something in a truck and you send it, or you load up something in a ship and you send it. You're also going to have other modes of transport such as airways. Okay, so we have to figure out what are the different routes that we can take. So if I'm shipping something, what is the shipping route that I will go through? What is the risk that is involved in taking that shipping route? Because shipping involves you crossing oceans and seas. And oceans and seas are a very dangerous thing to cross. Because first of all, there is no land. There's nothing around you. You are all alone in a body of water. Then, at the same time, you have various different risks. Okay, you have things such as pirates. Piracy is a very common aspect, especially when you are, crossing from Asia and you're going to Europe. You will be going through the Red Sea and the Suez Canal. So that area is a hotbed for piracy. And it's not just that area. Pretty much anytime you are in international water, okay, and you want to understand how you are moving across that international water, you will have the risk of piracy. So again, risk management is very important. Okay. So we are going to look at shipping routes. We are also going to look at performance of various different sources of transportation. We are going to look at the costs which are involved in transporting any goods. And we are going to look at delivery time. How much time does it take to deliver goods from point A to point B? Okay. And we will focus on planning, executing, and optimizing the movement of goods. And we will try to give some insights into our logistic performance. Then we also have CRM and SRM. These are two different things. So CRM is customer relation manager and SRM is supplier relation manager. So consumer is the end target of our supply chain. The consumer can be individual consumers. For example, if I am purchasing some products for myself, I'm an individual consumer. But if you're looking at something like iron rods, iron rods is going to be purchased by some kind of company, right? I don't have any use on an individual level for an iron rod. Okay, so why will I purchase it? So that is where you have bigger users. Okay, so CRM is very important because you will be able to keep a track of consumer orders, demand forecasts, sales history, and consumer feedback. Okay, and the CRM systems will provide us with data which is related to consumer interactions, and it is essential for planning of demand. Okay, now demand forecasting is very important. So we need the CRM to be able to forecast our demand. Okay, then we have supplier relation management. A supplier is a very important aspect of our supply chain analytics. Okay, so being able to access the information for the supplier, that is, how is the supplier performing, right? What is the performance level of a supplier? Okay, then what is the lead time? What are the various different contract terms? What are the various different procurement data which is available to us? These are all examples of supplier relation management. So whenever you're interacting with the supplier, you need to keep some kind of system where you can keep a track of those interactions. So for example, if I am giving some order to a supplier, why am I giving that order and what is the supplier supposed to do for me? Okay, this is all a very important aspect of our supplier management, supplier relationship management. Of course, these are not the only data sources. We have other things such as we can use IoT devices, which will keep a track of various factors, such as the conditions of goods. For example, you're storing it in a warehouse and they require certain kind of environmental conditions. For example, if you're storing iron, you want to ensure that your iron is stored in such a way that there is no loss of information. Okay, there is no rusting or anything. Okay, that is where our supply chain analytics can use something like a IoT device. Okay, then we have other things. Okay, we have other external data sources such as the economic trends in a market. We have e-platform, e-commerce platform. We have data from social media. For example, if you want to understand whether a consumer is happy with your product or not, you can use your consumer sentiment analysis from social media. Okay, among other things. Then we will also have financial data. We will have supply and vendor data. So the data sources are very, very high. Okay, but you need to figure out which data source you need to focus on and how is that data source going to help us. Yep. So then here I will load my data. So I'm going to use pandas. Okay, so I'll give the path to my dataset file and I will load the data. So need to run the libraries first. So run the different libraries that we need and we will load the dataset. Now I can say here df.info. What does df.info do? It will give us the basic statistical information about the data. So I'm looking at the data type here. Primarily, I'm focusing on the data type. Okay. What are the different data types that I need to look at? Okay. And how can I utilize that data. Okay, that is what I want to learn, right? So we have a few columns that we wanted to call. What were those columns? We had columns like supplier address, and we have columns like supplier name, which we don't want to keep because these columns are pointless for us. Okay, these columns don't add any useful information in our data. Okay, so I have no reason to keep these columns. Okay, then I have to perform our analytics now. What I want to do in terms of performing my analytics is I want to check what kind of information is my client's data giving us. Okay. What are the different sources of information which are available as part of this data set? So the first thing that I will do is I will do 4 moments of business decision. So the first moment business decision is our measures of central tendency. Now we have 3 major measures of central tendency, which are mean, median, and mode. Mean, median, and mode will help us in understanding the central mass of the data. And that is very important because if we don't understand the central mass of the data, then we will not be able to do any analysis. Okay. Right. So in this case, we are going to focus on one specific part of our analytics here. Okay. And the specific tool that we are going to look at is our mean. Okay. We are going to try to understand the average value. Okay. What kind of average value are we looking at? Okay. Then we will also look at our second moment business decision. The second moment business decision is our measures of dispersion. So what are the different measures that we have for dispersion and how can we utilize those measures? Okay. The different measures of dispersion that we have are variance, standard deviation, and range. And in our case, we will take a look at the variance. Okay. And we will try to understand our dispersion using the variance. The third moment business decision that we have is known as skewness. Skewness is going to help us in understanding the asymmetry in the data. So basically, we will look at the different columns, and in our columns, we are going to try to analyze the distribution of the data. And we are going to see, do we have skewed data or do we have a normal distribution? Okay. Then we have kurtosis. Kurtosis is going to talk about the peak of the data. What is the meaning of the peak of the data here? Peak of the data refers to the highest possible value in the data. Now, the peak of the data can be narrow, or the peak of the data can be wide. So that is what we are trying to understand here. So we'll create a function here. And in this function, what we are going to do is we are going to take some inputs. And what are these inputs that we are having? The inputs that we are having are the data frame itself and what are the different numerical columns which are available to us. And we are going to return an aggregate value for the mean, variance, skewness, and process. So we can run this line of code. Okay, there. What are the various different numerical columns? Okay, so again, you can go ahead and take a look at this data here, and you can try and identify. So credit card number is given as a numerical column, but we don't need it. We have discount, quantity, sales, right? These are the primary columns for numerical data. Then we have car year, and we also have car price. We don't need postal code here, so I will remove postal code. So these are the primary numerical columns which we will be looking at. Okay, so let's take our numerical columns here. Okay, and let's extract these values. And let's get the 4-moment business decisions. So we have the car model. Okay, so we are seeing an average that most of the cars on an average were around the year 2000. Okay, then we have car price. Okay, what is the average price of the car? And then what is the average sale price of that car? Okay, so these are the different aspects that we are looking at. Okay, then we have the average quantity. What is the average quantity that you are having? The average quantity that we have is 1.5. So on an average, the order is for 1.5 cars. Okay, and then we have the discount value. How much percentage discount are we giving to the users? So we get some basic idea on the data using these columns. Okay, then we're going to drop some columns here. We are going to drop the columns which are not adding any useful information. So we are going to drop supplier address. We're going to drop supplier contact details, customer name, phone number. We have already gotten our information in the form of the consumer ID. So I don't need their name. Okay, their name is not adding any useful information for me. Okay, so I will drop these columns. Okay, that's it. Now, in our data, we have a few columns which are related to the dates. So here we have, let's go to the data. Let's just scroll and find that value. So we have order date and ship date. So we have our order date and ship date. So what I want to do here is I want to understand how much time does it take for my order to ship. Okay, so that is a basic analysis. So I want to see how quick a supplier is. Okay, so now if you look at our df.info, we have the ship date and we have the order date. What is the data type that we see here? The data type that we see here is object, but it should not be object. This is not object data type. This is date and time data type. So we are gonna convert it into date and type, and then we can quickly just run this df.info again, and we can see if it is converted or not. And now you can see that, okay, this is still showing up as our object. Okay. So after we do this, we are going to extract our year, month, and day. Okay. And we are also going to extract day of the week, on which day the order was placed. If the order is placed at a time when there is a holiday, for example, if I'm placing the order on a Sunday and the supplier is not working on a Sunday, and that doesn't make any sense, right? It makes zero sense that we add that information. Okay, or we say that the order was delayed because the supplier was late, right? It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. So we need to ensure that we are keeping a track of that information as well. And that is where our date time will come into the picture. So we will extract all of this information. Okay. And here, if you just run this instead of df, okay, if you run this in the info column, you will see that it has changed in the second copy dataset from object to data. Okay. So here we have converted all of this into our year, month, and date. Okay. And once we have done that, we can drop the original columns because we already have the necessary information that we require. Okay. So if you take a look at the clean data, all right, you already have all of this information that you require. So you don't need those two columns now. This is known as feature engineering, where we will take the existing features and we will create which new features. Okay, these features did not exist previously, but now they have been added. Okay, this is known as our feature engineering. Okay, then we have a lot of categorical values. Okay, for example, supplier name, and we also have car maker, car model, etc. All of this is our categorical values. So when you're dealing with categorical values, what do you need to do? You need to do categorical encoding. Okay, we are going to do categorical encoding. Okay, so we will do this process, and we can see here that after we do categorical encoding, we have created a sparse matrix of 1000 by 3489. That means we have a lot of unique categories in the data. Okay, we have a lot of unique categories available in our data. Now, the question that a lot of people might have is, what do we do with the null values? In our case, there are no null values. So that's why we are not focusing on the null value aspect at all. Instead, we are trying to focus on whatever problem is already in front of us. Okay. So after we do all of this process, now we have created a sparse matrix, and there is no point in opening that sparse matrix because it will take a lot of time and the information will not be easy for us to understand. Okay. So what do you want to do here? The next step that we want to do here is we want to normalize our data. Okay. So we will apply our normalization steps, and now our data is normalized. We have used a standard scaler. So in the standard scaler, we will ensure that the data that we have is between 0 and 1. Okay. So then we need to do our outlier analysis. This is the final step that we need to perform. Now, what is outlier analysis? Outlier analysis is the process of identifying outliers. Okay. So we will create a visualization and we are going to look at our numerical columns only. Okay. We are going to focus only on the numerical columns. All right. So we will do the subplots. We will take the number of rows. Okay. And then we will create a box plot using our Seaborn library. So Seaborn is an advanced visualization library, which we can use in our creation of box plots. So let's create these box plots. And here we have that information. Now, what do we see here? If we take a look at our data, we have our box plot. Okay. Now, what does the box plot do for us? The box plot is going to visualize when and where we will have our outliers. Okay. So here we can see that in most columns, we don't have any outliers. So we don't really need to do any kind of treatment for outliers. Okay. So here I will take care of the outliers which are present in the column, and the outlier analysis that I will do is going to be based on either IQR method, which is a standard method that we follow for when it comes to our outlier analysis. Okay. So we will do winsorization. We will extract our lower bound values and we will extract our upper bound values using the IQR method. And then we will apply this on our data frame. Okay. Then after that, we will just apply this process here. And then finally, we will take our clean data and we will save this data. Okay. Now you can obviously go ahead and analyze this data as well. So here we have the supply chain data. What is the name that we have given? Cleaned supply chain data. Okay. And this will take time to open because we have over 3,000 columns that we are doing the analysis on. Okay. So this is how our outlier analysis is going to work. Okay. Now, with this, we complete today's topics. Now, of course, this does not cover every single aspect of our analytics. There is still a lot of things that you can do. There are still a lot of aspects that you can cover, but this should give you a preliminary aspect, and this should give you a preliminary idea as to what you should aim for if you are interested in doing supply chain analytics. After we do our analytics, we can also look at the optimization using machine learning, which is again an important aspect of our industry. So while today's masterclass is getting completed, keep in mind that you still have a lot of things that you can cover as part of your learning experience, and that you should try to enhance your knowledge as much as you can. So from everyone here at 360DigiTMG, I am grateful to all of you who have decided to join us today and give us the time of your day to go through this masterclass, to understand the different aspects of the industry, and to learn about how exactly does analytics work as part of our supply chain analytics. So once again, thank you so much, everyone, and we will see you next time. Have a great day.